April 9th, and we have a few items on our agenda. We're going to start with Dr. Higgins. He's going to talk to us about the cell phone policy at the high school. We had some discussion about social media use and kids having phones with them and possibly recording. And I know there's been a change to the policy at the high school regarding cell phones. So if you could just go over that for the public a little bit, just to clarify any misconceptions about it.
Yeah, there, we didn't have any issues with anybody recording anybody in the building. What the feedback I got last year from not just the staff, but from parents as well, is that the phones get to be a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
It is not really possible to stop everybody from bringing their phones to school every day. In a perfect world, that would be exactly what we would do. And so part of the feedback last year was that the phones are distracting, the phones are being taken out in class. There was small amount of issues of maybe students taking pictures of a test or something like that, or passing those along. But when you and I were in school, people cheated on things the same way they just did with phones out. So one of the things, and I will give credit to my wife, who was a school teacher. And one of the things that she did in her classroom, and when I did research on how to best try to curb the use of cell phones in a classroom, would be to, what we did was we purchased, I want to call them cubbies, but they're basically, you can picture like the back of your closet shoe holders, right? That's basically, I purchased one of those for every classroom. And I drove home to the teachers at the beginning of the year that it would be, it's in their purview to say to students, if they don't want them to use it, or they shouldn't be using it in the classroom, and we're hammering home to the students that they are not to take their phones out in the classroom. If they do take their phones out in the classroom, or if a teacher wishes to at the beginning of the classroom, they can ask the students to put that phone up in the cubby so it's away from them and they don't have to use it. It's not accessible to them. They don't have that drive to go into their cell phone. What we saw was at the beginning of the year, we had a lot of teachers do it. Mm-hmm. You had some pushback from students, but a lot of students were also like, okay, this is better, we'll just leave it up there. Once students started to become more responsible, you see teachers that don't necessarily have students put it up in the cubby, but students, you don't have teachers asking students to put it up in that cubby. You actually have students now responsible enough where they keep their phone away. It's either in their backpack or in their jacket or in their pocket. They don't take it out during class. You do see some situations, and in those situations, a teacher can say to a student, I need you to put your phone in the cubby, and I'm using cubby as a general term, whatever they use, until class is over. What we started to see was students didn't want to have to put their phone in the cubby, so they weren't taking their phone out to get in trouble, so they would have to put their phone in the cubby. But the cell phone, it's a protocol in the school. The cell phone policy is what it is. As far as using cell phones in the classroom is a violation of what would be the code of conduct. We do have a 3-tiered system in our code of conduct for discipline. And it's a tier 1 offense, in where, the first time it happens, a teacher has a conversation with the student. And that's really the most important thing when it comes to any type of conduct in the classroom, is you want your teachers to have conversations with your students. This is not appropriate for the classroom. You want to keep the cell phones away. And then if it becomes an issue, a tier 2 level discipline in the high school would be a contact with the parent from the teacher. And if it comes to a tier 3 level of discipline, that's when a student would get quote unquote written up, where a vice principal would have to step in. And then a vice principal would then take responsibility for that discipline, and that could be another conversation with the student, warning, a detention, depending on the severity of the situation. So if you want to do research on cell phones in a classroom, all you have to do is Google it, and the articles come up. You see the state of Indiana has actually banned cell phones in schools, so no one's allowed to bring a cell phone into a school. There are other states that are taking steps to do this as well. School districts are actually purchasing lockable pouches for every student where they have to lock their cell phone in a lockable pouch. Some of it's pretty extreme, but I think there's a nice balance to teach students responsibility about their using their phone. I am a big believer that their phone is going to be with them for the rest of their lives. I always think back to, I did go to parochial school and the nuns telling me I couldn't wear a watch with a calculator on it because I was never going to have a calculator with me when I grew up, and now I have a calculator with me. So, we know that in the future, students are going to rely on their cell phones, but teaching them personal responsibility with their cell phone and using it at the proper time and not in the classroom is just part of that.
Okay, so my other question would be, do we need to update anything on the policy that we currently have in place? Because it's talking about pagers and cell phones. I know we don't really use pagers anymore, and the last time we revised it was 2016.
So if I may, just reviewing the policy prior to this meeting, there's nothing really in here, I don't think, about them saying cell phones are not allowed. The policy doesn't say cell phones specifically are not allowed in the building. This is more of a, you're not allowed to record with any recording device. And I do believe this is a little bit dated. I don't know if Strauss Esme gave an update on this or has given an update in the past, but there's definitely language in here that I think could be discussed and updated, changed or added. Just as an example, the second paragraph has listed a lot of examples and then basically says, or anything else. Do we need all of those examples? That would be an attorney's recommendation. There's nothing in here about artificial intelligence, which is something that we've been talking about a lot recently.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about portable fax machines and kind of things that we don't even have anywhere.
Right. In the third paragraph, after the second sentence, I think there should be something that says, unless the device is issued by the district, because that is something that we've been doing for over 10 years now. That is not in this policy. I think and this would just be a suggestion for me, there is a lot in here that is given permission by the teacher to use. I think you should put in there, given permission by the administration as well. Or teacher or administration, something like that. But I think a lot of it is definitely outdated, and I think there could be a good discussion on how to update this. That's just my 2 cents.
Anyone have any comments or questions?
Well, yeah, I mean, it pretty much goes against what we tell the students to do, right? It's calling it an electronic communication recording device. This was put into place and not updated since 2016, but we hand all of our students an iPad in high school, and it is an electronic communication recording device. So
Since well before 2016.
right,
Yeah.
so I mean, if you read this, as it is, everybody would be in violation of the policy, really. It's mandated, it has an M up at the top.
Because the state
It's
says
mandated.
that you can't have cell phones in school.
They haven't updated it in any of the alerts since I've been on the committee.
Kevin, you said something
Since 2021
about,
Yeah.
connected to the school network. That is acceptable.
So there are other policies, and they're entitled acceptable use policies.
Right.
Which we have.
And there are 2 levels of
Right.
those acceptable use policies. One is networking and one is gaming.
Yes.
And I believe, I don't know verbatim what those policies say offhand, but the networking acceptable use policy goes into connecting to the network.
Right.
Yeah.
And are you saying so at a typical high school, what would you say is the percentage of students who have their cell phone out in class? Would it be, you have a number or just an estimate?
I mean, it's a lot less than it used to be.
Right. 10%?
there- I would even say it's less than that. In class, in the hallways, in the cafeterias,
What
they're
about-
probably all out.
Headphones. So the cell
Headphones,
phone's in the pocket, but the headphones are in.
you see a lot of headphones in the hallway,
Right.
and I'm talking about earbuds, like
Right,
sticking
right.
earbuds.
Yes.
You don't see a lot of it in the classroom unless the teacher is giving them permission. There are many classes where students using earbuds for their iPads
Right,
a lot.
right.
So it really depends on the class that they're going through, if they're watching certain videos. If they're watching things, instructional videos or something like that on their iPad, then they're listening to it personally.
So it's hard to ascertain if they're actually listening to their cell phone through the earbuds or they're listening.
Sure.
And that's really a hard thing to do.
Very much.
You know, and it's very hard to police that as a teacher.
So it's not necessarily hard if you know that your students shouldn't have AirPods in. I'm using that as
It makes it easy.
an
Right,
example,
absolutely.
right? So you
Right.
can say as a teacher, matter of fact, I observed a teacher today.
Right.
And the very beginning of the class, they were handing out something like, hey, welcome back, tell us what you did on your break, let's
Right.
talk about it as much. And as they got the class together, it was, okay, all AirPods out.
Right.
There are some teachers who will say, put your iPad away for the next 15 minutes, we have to do something.
Right.
And then you can take your iPad out. So it's really classroom management 101,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So
Right.
it's just different than what it used to be, classroom management.
Definitely.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what is mandatory in here. There's always language that is.
Yeah, I think we could go back. I mean, that's why I could only speak from 2021. I have not seen, I was just discussing that. Ms. Alvarez, both of us, and since she's taken up, have not seen an update to this policy.
So being that I'm new to this, if it's mandated, we can't change it, or we can modify the language and be ahead of the curve, like we have been with some of the other policies.
That's when they're not mandated.
When
We
they're
tend
next
to
to
be ahead
this,
of the
we
curve.
have to wait.
Yeah, I mean, what we can do is we can take a look and then we can reach out. We have an individual that we speak to, not speak to, from South SBA
Okay.
to say, we had this at a mini meeting. This is a question we'd like to know, because
Maybe they
2016 is a
have
long time ago.
like in the next month or so.
I mean, if you read this.
It's outdated. It's very outdated.
And I'd like
They're
to,
talking about like pagers and,
Pagers.
because
There weren't even,
We're-
in 2016, they should have gotten rid of the word pager.
but I'm
the principal or designee shall immediately notify the superintendent of schools and the appropriate criminal justice or juvenile justice agency if the student brings or possesses a remotely activated paging device in violation of this policy. I mean.
That's like 1991.
and I like the comment you made, or Dr. Lehman, about AI, like that's something that should be
Well, that's
included on here as
scary,
well.
So, I mean, we may even be a little premature on that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're
But something to keep in
We're
mind.
definitely talking about, I know other districts are talking about developing policies for the use of, the proper use of
The
art.
whole world is developing policies on that.
Very
Kevin, is it easy to detect plagiarism from AI? Or do they have actually programs that get around that?
There are some programs that pick it up.
Right.
Most of the time, with the naked eye, it's easy because you know that the student doesn't write like this.
Right.
But it's getting increasingly more difficult.
Right.
But I do know, I know we're going a little off topic, but sometimes if you use Grammarly, which I think we do use, sometimes with that AI detector, it'll say you're using AI when you're using Grammarly instead.
We
It's been
don't,
happening.
that has happened. We don't use Grammarly as a district. We use Turnitin.
Okay,
And they have an AI detector, and there are, again, this is where the expertise of the teacher
Mhm.
comes in. If they're using a peer editor or an editor on Turnitin, that will then sometimes, but it's usually the same, if it's Turnitin, it's the same program, and they'll know what they've done in that program.
Even if their own work.
So you will do, I'm sorry, but if you do turn in something of your own twice, then they'll look at that and say, oh, this might be an issue. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, so we've had a few staff members attend some professional development on AI. Again, as we evolve to it, it's gonna be evolving faster than we can get there.
Right.
Our current thought and our current process is come up with a continuum of expectations for students and staff about the appropriate use of AI. Because it's not a binary yes and no use it. There are different kinds of AI with different applications, and there are different situations in a learning environment where it may or may not be something that is appropriate to use and/or maybe that's appropriate not to use. So there is, like, for one discipline, you may be using it. For another discipline, it may not be appropriate to use. So the thought process is, and we're getting resources as we attend these professional development opportunities and you really through the high school and then filter it down from there, work to develop, like I said, a continuum of expectations because every situation is going to be different. I would say it's not even as binary as this test you can use a calculator on and this one you can't, right? There's a million more little intervals in when it may or may not be appropriate. So we started that conversation a few months ago. We just had a couple staff members get back from professional development about a week or two ago. We now have some things that we can, and I have to share them with you because we showed them today. Yep. And our thought is we'll start at the high school with some students and teachers and administrators and see how are the students using it, because we may not even know in some of the ways of using it and what tools.
Right.
What are the teachers using it, thinking of using it for, or how do they want to use it? And then really, like I said, come up with, it's not going to be this is when you can use it and this is when you can't. It's really a range of expectations, and then you could take a scenario and apply it to whether you're a student or a staff member, and they can guide you to, like, you can use it to help develop ideas for writing an essay, but it's not going to write the essay for you. You can't use it to do that, or something, or maybe you use it to help do some grammar corrections, but it's not about the written part of the essay. So there's a lot of different variables, and like I said, it's a continuum. Again, so there was about 300 people at the training that the staff member was telling us about. When the group was asking, this is nationally, when the group was asked, how many of your districts have any procedures or policies surrounding and relating to AI, 3 of the 300 people raised their hand.
Wow.
So it's something that the state hasn't given any guidance on or anything like that, but we recognize our staff is talking about it, our students are talking about it. And it's not about catching people or it's a gotcha piece.
Right.
AI is really going to be a tool that we are all going to have to learn. It's going to impact professions, jobs in the future, what tasks people do in their roles in their careers. So we have to, I don't want to say embrace it, but we have to understand how it could potentially be applied and teach our students, just like problem solving, when and how it could be used in different scenarios. Because we still want them to learn the core content. They have to learn how to do certain things, and AI can tell them those answers. But once you know those core things, what can you leverage AI to do?
Right.
Again, so that's where that's our conversation. That's what, and literally this is evolving. As we come up with continuum, it may be changing as we get, like pictures are now the new AI stuff.
Yeah.
Developing pictures. It was really just text in the beginning. Now it's pictures and photos.
Artwork.
You don't know what's real and fake anymore.
Yeah,
It's kind of scary.
except if it has fingers, right? It hasn't figured out how to do fingers yet.
Right. So that's where we
Yeah,
are.
Yeah.
And again, putting something in here, who knows if it's appropriate to put it in here, but we're looking at more like, let's call them like procedures and expectations at a building level, whereas the policy is really code driven, right?
Yeah.
And I don't see code coming from the state anytime soon. So,
But it's good to follow up and see if there's gonna be like an update coming or.
So, yeah, maybe check with Esme and say,
Yeah, Scott says
has anybody else, and then say, hey, we're asking
Mhm.
for this to be revised and, stuff, and let them do the legwork on it.
It's funny, because now that we're talking about it, I bet you we get one next one.
Somebody's listening to our meeting and they're saying, okay, we're gonna send this out, but yeah, they could already, that's what I'm saying, maybe they already are working on it.
Like last month we got,
Last month, we got, I mean, we sat here, we did a marathon.
Yes,
meeting.
marathon.
It's not Stroud Esme though, it's the state.
the state, Stroud Esme, yeah.
Changes it.
Right,
It's, they're the ones that, Strauss Esme is just a service.
So
It's
the
a
state
law.
put it together.
So the state,
It's when the state changes it.
so we're
that
gonna
it comes
depend
out.
upon the state as well.
Yeah.
Now, does Strauss Esme, I'm sorry, may I ask a
It's a-
question?
it's a-
Does Strauss Esme give you a suggestion on what it should be, or is
They
it
give you
verbatim what the state
sometimes.
They
says?
give you verbatim what the state says when it's mandated. They give you suggestions of recommendations. And then they also give you some open-ended that we get to select.
So that's one of the ones on our.
Yes, we have an
agenda today.
open-ended one right now on the Honor Society.
Yeah, maybe we'll stick around for that one.
Oh, good, okay.
Oh, okay, so we'll
No.
go with to
I
the.
don't believe.
Oh,
Does anybody have any questions about the social media? I mean, the one side.
we are human beings though, right? We're all real? Everybody sitting here is real? AI.
Pagers and cell phone. Any other further questions on that?
No, good.
All right, so then let's move on to the student achievement.
Yep.
We tabled this from March.
Yep, the only one we tabled, I believe.
Yes, because we had to fill in a couple of
Full
things.
blanks.
Mhm.
so the template that Strauss Esme provided us for honoring student achievement is a very broad template. So what I did is I went back to our existing policy, because the changes that were in the template were consistent with all the other changes from last month, with basically anywhere there was a committee involved in determining who to honor and recognize as a student, they had a section in there that said, the committee will rigorously ensure that no student is denied an award or an opportunity to compete for an award on the basis of, and they listed out race, color, creed, religion, etc. The change for this policy, as well as all the other previous ones, where they crossed out all the specific categories, and they put in the statement, the protected categories listed at NJAC 6A 7-111.
Yeah.
So the reason they did that change was so they could update the code without the ripple effect of having everybody down the line have to update their policies to add or subtract any protected category. Now when they update the code,
It's already automatically,
we're automatically updated.
which is so much smarter.
So my recommendation would be to take our existing policy
Okay.
and add that statement, because there's only one place that we use a committee, and that's the Honors Society selection. All of our other awards are valedictorian, salutatorian, which are numerical in nature, as well as the honor rolls, which are based off of numbers. So there's no committee involved in
Page 3 of.
making decisions
Yeah.
or selecting students.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be to add the sentence I just read on page 3, number 2, at the bottom of the paragraph. In addition, we would add the sentence, the committee will rigorously ensure that no student is denied an award or the opportunity to compete for an award on the basis of the protected categories listed at NJAC 6A 7-1.1. And that just represents, in the paragraph where they speak about the selection committee for the Honor Society, it just puts a sentence in there that covers us in the sense that they're using no bias to identify who's in an honor society.
And just to be specific, it's the National Honor Society. 'Cause
Yeah.
there are other honor societies
Sorry.
that do not have that committee, so
Yeah.
just the National Honor
But you
Society.
have Spanish on the study, Italian on the study.
And those are all criterion based.
Yep, so the National Honor, and it's actually titled National Honor Society on page 2. But other than that, there is no other committee within our
With our structure.
recognizing students.
Yeah.
It's all numerical pieces.
Okay.
The other academic recognition, because the part that it's in here that we don't have is academic recognition. Those awards are actually given by specific outside organizations. So whether it's, a parent to teacher group or a band parents association, or those are like, think of the senior awards night. So our policy, it's actually called Special Interest Groups 9700, and it's referenced in the regulation we're talking about. The last paragraph of it says, the board will permit the award of scholarships or prizes to deserving pupils, provided that the information regarding the pupils is released. And it goes on, but it defines what those organizations, what their threshold is to engage us to provide an award. So that's, I just want to explain why that we didn't have an academic selection committee. Is our academic selection really comes from those outside organizations, and ours is really good.
So it's different.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any questions? No?
Then we have to fill in all these.
No, we
Yeah.
have, no,
So we're going to use
So it'll
the
be
old
more
policy.
we're gonna use our old policy.
We're just going to add one sentence to section 2
Two.
on page 3
You have it for-
at the bottom of the paragraph. I'll give it to
We'll
you.
take care of it.
That way,
Yeah.
everything stays the same with our criteria for principals list. We can certainly go back and look at those in the future if we need to,
Sure.
but it's not something that
Right.
was required in this update.
This is just an update and it's not mandatory, but but other districts may have it in that format, we have it in a different format, so we don't have to do the fill in the blank.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Was it worth staying for, Dr. Rivera?
Absolutely. For a penny, right?
Thank you, Dr.
What's
Higgins.
your favorite penny shape or pound?
Last day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Great night.
night.
Take care.
Good night.
Take care.
Feel better.
Thanks.
Take a day off.
Take a day.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Like that? Such a giving.
Take a day off on us.
I don't think it's giving principle.
I gotta go in tomorrow, so let's wrap this up.
Okay, so next on the agenda, we have, public participation in board meetings. Another board member had asked me to bring it up and to have a discussion on how we feel about allowing remote participation in public forum rather than only in-person participation at public forum. What are our thoughts on it? Is it something we want to consider?
Zoom, you're talking phone,
Yeah, I think it comes up over the speakers, just like when one of us can be at the meeting.
right,
Yeah,
right.
so it wouldn't be like, it wouldn't be a video, it'd be just
Right.
like a speakerphone type of.
So off the top of my head, I would say absolutely not. That's my first gut thing, but if you're going to go that route, you should put some pretty strict parameters about what it would do. The first thing I would do is I would also change that the time allotment for speaking is 2 minutes.
But
And then
for overall or
for overall, for everybody, because if you're gonna start allowing people who are not gonna get out of their comfort of their recliner chair and come to a meeting, you're gonna have more people who may want to speak.
I think the thought
And-
process wasn't that people don't want to come to the meeting, it's more for our senior population. And not all of them like to drive at night and they may want to participate, but it makes it difficult for them.
You
that's-
know,
I think either way, I still think that you, because you would still have your people here who would come up for both sessions or 3 sessions if we had other things for public thing. I think that that would be the first thing. The second thing is I would say that they would have to be on camera because we get a lot of people, if you sign into even these committee meetings, we get people who sign into the committee meetings as Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck,
Right.
Superman,
Yeah, I-
concerned township person. And we, you know, just like when we have people who come to the podium, they have to state their name, and what township they're from. If they're not from Monroe Township, most people come and state their,
right,
Katie Belco, Monroe Township, or Katie Belco Avenue, New Jersey, I'll leave my hometown, and just say that. I would think that you would need to, have that, thing. I honestly, personally think 4 minutes duration is way too long. And you can say what you need to say and make your public comment in less than 4 minutes. There's no need for a diatribe. 4 minutes is a very long time to speak. And I.
was this ever used before?
Only
During COVID, right?
During COVID,
But everyone was on the video screen. if I
Right.
recall
Yes, it was
correctly. It was like
everyone,
a Zoom.
Right.
we came back in person, the remote
Right.
was,
Same with the township council too.
yeah, the town council doesn't allow.
That-
Town council doesn't allow it?
Does the town council, so the town council doesn't allow that now,
No.
so you can't phone in or you have to be there.
No.
Yeah, I would probably lean toward being here, security, again, you don't know who that, if it's the phone, you don't know who really is on that phone, if they're really, saying who they are. And then time-wise, I mean, you could have someone sitting at home at, 10 o'clock at night and we're winding down our meeting and all of a sudden, hey, well, I just thought of this, boom, and then
Well, it would have
In
to
the
still be done during the agenda time
Right.
of the public
And I think
speaking.
in the past, you had to submit your name ahead of time, correct? And get
No,
approved
not-
to be put
not-
on the list?
No, but that would be a
But some
great idea.
districts do that.
Yes, that
Right.
would be, to me,
They
that
do
would be a
that.
great idea, that if you, want to speak at the board meeting and you can't attend in person and you want to do remote, you could say, you've got to notify the board president a day ahead of time that you're going to want to speak remotely.
or maybe
To the
maybe
board.
even an email instead.
Sort of,
Mhm.
or, that kind of thing. And, and if not reducing the amount of time to talk to 2 minutes, limit the actual amount of time for the public forum. Like, public forum should be 30 minutes in duration. And
Eliza,
if you limit it to 2 minutes, and that's actually a recommendation from the school boards. And if you limit it, it then it gets people in the process and the thought process of being concise with their words.
Right.
Being to the point with their words. And the other thing the school board says is that you shouldn't allow more than maybe 1 or 2 people to speak on the same subject if they're going to say the same thing. So, we're gonna ask the public to come up and tell us about what color do they want us to paint the school building, and I'm using something ridiculous. And Chrissy comes, and we give them 6 choices, and Chrissy comes up and says, oh, I think we should go with blue, I think we should go with blue, I think we should go with blue. You wanna say pink, that's great, you come up. But if we have, 14 people that say blue, it's like, okay, so blue is a popular color, let's, and maybe that's not the best, thing, but, my opinion is that, no smoking should be allowed in the school. If everybody in the room, that's what they agree with, and you're gonna come up and say, well, I think we should allow smoking in the school. That's not what I'm saying, folks, we should not be allowing smoking anywhere. Everybody should quit smoking.
They used to.
Smoking is terrible, right, they did, believe me, they used to allow it in hospitals too. Kind of thing, so that's my thought process on it, is that, because the public portion of the meeting is for public comment, not for bashing of the Board of Education members or the administration or the other folks. It's for public comment on the issues that the board is discerning on that particular night. So whatever's on the agenda, whatever we're discerning, and then to offer your public comment for maybe something that's coming up in the future for our open public forum section.
The other thing school boards recommends is not to do a question and answer like what we
Yeah.
do now.
Yes, exactly.
It shouldn't
Questions?
be a dialogue with.
No, it should not.
It should be the administration, then answering the person's questions after emailing, sending an
Yes,
email.
David Rubin wrote
Yeah.
an excellent article
So,
that's available
that's
on the
another-
Jersey
And
School
the
Boards about
council was
that.
also 2 minutes, right, or was it more?
Council? I'm not
5
sure.
minutes.
I think
5 minutes, wow.
council does allow a lot, but
The council talks,
Council-
but it's a running
the
clock.
running clock, it
Right.
doesn't stop.
Okay.
Our clock stops.
Right, okay.
Do we always have 4 minutes, or was it increased? Because I know this was
It was
recently revised, right?
three of
It
them.
was 2 minutes at
20.
one point, it was 3 minutes at another point, it was 3 minutes with the clock running.
The board attorney constantly says it is not question and answer, it should be.
It should not
So-
be
so
question
it
and
should
answer.
be.
All the time.
So Carmen, would you be in
Public comments.
favor of a board president to sit there and not answer when they come up to the podium and answer? Because I've been criticized for not answering questions. So is that,
Well, that's how most boards do it. They don't, the board president does not go back and forth with the public.
so you would be in favor
I
of
would be.
no longer answering the public?
Well, it's not, you're not answering the public. You do answer, the administration answers the public. You can send an email, you can send a follow-up phone call. It's the administration who answers the public.
Not at that time, not.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be at that time.
The board attorney has said that it should be.
I think
someone
if
taking
people come
questions.
here and have a question,
Yeah, usually the board
I
secretary.
think that if we have the answer,
I
that
disagree.
I
It's for public comment, they can make their public comment, and I'm sure that there are other people that disagree with me, but it's public comment, and we can get their answer back to them at another time. Many times we answer the same question over and over and over again, and we waste a lot of time. My thoughts and my feelings about now that I'm ending my board service would probably be very different if I didn't have meetings that went till 2 a.m, especially during the first year of my tenure. I might see things differently, and we allow the public to abuse us a lot. And I'll probably get criticized on Facebook for saying that, but we get abused, and we should not be abused. I'm all for public comment, I'm all for open meetings, I'm all for having, but what we put ourselves through, I just don't think we should be doing it. We should not be answering the public if they have a question, if it's something that can be answered very quickly in here, but we should not be having a back and forth conversation. We should not be answering every single question that comes up, and the public comment should be a public comment. If the public has a question, they're free to email at the board at any time.
And a lot of public members do email myself. They do email Dr. Lehman. I answer all the time,
I go to council meetings and I ask questions and I get answers. So I mean, I think that if we're deliberating on something and a member of the public has a question on what we're deliberating on or why we're doing something, and they take the time out to come here, I think that we do owe the public an answer. I mean, that's just,
Right then and
I
there.
disagree, I disagree.
If we have the
I think we owe an answer.
But then we pick and choose, so if someone asks a
Right,
question.
and that's when you get into.
If someone asks a question,
Answer
perhaps that's meant to
questions.
be disrespectful, the question is meant to be rude, threatening, mean, just mean, we have
right.
mean-spirited people, and sometimes if it's tough, we don't answer them because someone's being disrespectful, but then someone asks, you're right, someone asks a legitimate question, parent comes up and asks a question about, I don't know, the way we're gonna handle a vacation, the way we're gonna handle homework over a vacation.
Those
A
are really
legitimate
good
good question, we
questions.
wanna answer that.
Right.
We feel like we should answer it, but then we'll look at, we should, but then we'll look at, we're picking and choosing what we answer.
Mhm.
And then you're not,
You can't.
Then you're
if
not
you
being
can't answer
transparent,
everything
right?
You say, then I mean, that, transparency, that's not transparent. If you have people come up to the podium and ask you a question on something you're voting on, and you say, you want to go back to the way it used to be, when the previous board presidents looked at you and said, thank you for your comment, and you came and asked a legitimate question or had a legitimate concern?
Did you get an answer though after?
No, I
No.
didn't
Well, see,
well,
that's,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that's the
different.
follow-up that was
That's the
missing, right?
follow-up is
control
missing.
that.
Well, you would hope that your administration would answer the questions, the board secretary would write them down, and then someone in the administration would
But you're
respond
not
to the
gonna,
person.
but you're not gonna control that as a board member.
Well, it's not the board president's job, it's the we're here to oversee that
You're here
it's
to run,
well
the
run.
board president's here to run a meeting. It's the meeting of the board.
It is, but
And
the
if
question
a
should be
member of the
answered by the
public comes and
administration.
asks an elected official who's voting on something that involves their children or their tax money or their community, to sit here and I'm sorry, I am absolutely not in favor of looking at somebody standing there at the podium. I'm criticized by my own board members some meetings because I'm not answering questions. And now I'm hearing I should have sat here for 2 years and said, thank you for your comments. We're not going to answer anything. That I personally don't think that's transparent. That is the opposite of transparent. If you have somebody taking your time out to come to the podium and ask you a legitimate question on the agenda, no, I don't think you should write it down and hope that it gets answered at another date. I just don't. I don't think that's
But
not.
who determines what's legitimate?
Yeah, right, that's the hardest
Who
thing.
determines what's
If
legitimate?
we had the
But-
answer.
But Chrissy, I don't mean you brought it up, but there have been times when you've refused to answer people that had legitimate questions and you didn't answer them because one, the way that they asked the questions is definitely
Mean-spirited.
but doesn't mean their question wasn't legitimate. So who determines what's legitimate? And so to me, it's either all or nothing. And then if you're going to answer every question that comes in, you have to answer every question that comes. And then we live by the 4 minutes and we stop the clock. I think that was probably one of the biggest mistakes we made, was stopping the clock. Because I think the clock should run, because I think 4 minutes is, the way we do it now is too long. And so I just think that, I don't think that we should be answering either we answer every question that comes to us, regardless of how it's presented to us or how it's brought to us, or we answer no question.
I agree with the consistency.
It has to be
One or the other.
consistent. It's one or the other. And I have not seen consistency with that, and not just with you as president, but I have not seen that consistency at all since I've been actively involved with with the board and pre-COVID, pre-being elected, listening today. There were some questions that were answered and there were some questions that weren't answered. And to me, it's either all or nothing, and we really shouldn't be having a back and forth, and we do a lot of that back and forth. And maybe we allow administration to answer the questions, and as the board president, if there's a question that no one can answer, then we ask whoever's taking minutes or taking the notes. Ms. Tacklefarah does it most nights, and say, can you
She
write
does,
it? Can
she
you-
does.
Can
She
you
gets
write that
that
down
most
so we can get back to that person?
Yeah,
And then that becomes someone's responsibility to follow up with
the
the.
key is that the question does have to be answered.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's,
Yeah, that has
to-
we don't want to neglect the public, we want to give them their respect, and
Mhm.
everyone's question is important to them,
Yeah.
and and there's things that, we could talk about, we could go over 1,000,000 times, and for some reason, they're not getting it, okay? And when they come to the podium, I think Chrissy wants to try to clarify it, and, and really say, hey, kind of thank you for your time, and some of the questions are hard, but you do your best to answer them, because you feel that you should answer the questions, and that's important, because, people do come to a meeting for that, to get their question answered, and we've established that. But I think if we stood firm on the fact that your question will be answered, it might not be answered tonight, but your question will be answered. But we really need to have a way of making sure that the
We did
question
have
is
that, I
answered.
want to say, it wasn't, I don't know if it was last meeting or the meeting before, a couple of the, community members asked questions, and we had specific, individuals that was appropriate, did respond. I think some of the issue is when someone comes up there and is not really asking
Right,
a legitimate question, they come up there to be a little, you
right,
know,
they're telling you, right,
they're telling you
You're right,
why is,
right.
and it's
Right.
tough.
right.
And I
The
think
only
it's great.
question I absolutely think we should absolutely never answer is anything about someone, personnel wise. Anyone that you know, that we.
And those
that
are
we-
the questions I don't ask.
Yes,
These are-
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I
and
agree.
those
Yeah,
are-
we'll discuss
And there
personnel.
was
Right, I
a
agree
recent
with that,
time
yes.
that somebody came up and I knew exactly where it was leading, and that is why I
That's why you didn't
didn't answer the
answer.
question.
Mhm.
It was
Because you
going
know.
to the personnel answer.
Right, right.
And I knew that I knew what
Mhm.
the next question was coming, and it was going to be a personnel question, and it was inappropriate. It was very inappropriate when it was being asked. You know, school board also says you can have people come up to comment and ask questions, and then close public forum, and then you could answer.
Oh.
The administration could do their best.
Could elaborate on, that's actually not a bad
That's a
idea.
compromise.
That's not a bad idea. That's a nice compromise. And the stopping of the clock is part of our policy, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
But
I'm
it
fine.
wasn't always like that, right?
No, it used to be,
You know, if
Stopping
you
the
wanted
clock
to
is-
4 minutes.
because
and
that makes
not-
it, I think by stopping at the clock, it's almost like an automatic back and forth, even if it's unintentional, because you stop the clock in the anticipation that you're gonna get a response.
Well, if we're not responding, then you take out the stop the clock because it was
Yeah.
stopped to give a response.
Mhm.
That's why we,
So if everybody asks all their questions and there's appropriate responses that we can provide right there and then, like you said, when we stop, public forum's closed, and we there were things that we could, it could be curriculum, it could be non-personnel, it could be, you know,
For like, Mr. Tate.
right, and he does come up a lot of times when he is here,
I
Right.
couldn't come up with the word buildings grounds.
buildings grounds, right?
Mhm.
So maybe that's a way to
That's a
do it,
nice compromise.
That would be a good
because then
compromise.
people feel like they're coming here and they are being heard, and
Right.
and if the answer is available, we provide it.
that night, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's important.
I think
to-
that is important.
You know, we have a lot of, we've seen it, we have a lot of people that come once or twice, and they're coming based on something we're either voting on or discussing, or something that is personally happening to them. We had a gentleman come about transportation.
Yes.
And he sat the whole meeting because it wasn't on the agenda, and he waited until the second public forum. And he came up and he had some legitimate questions.
Right,
It would be, I feel disrespectful if he
Right.
waited for 4 hours to talk and ask his question.
Thank you very much, we'll send you an email.
Exactly, I just don't.
So if the policy refers to, once public forum is closed, questions that are answered, are able, that's the key, are
Yeah,
able to be answered that evening will be, otherwise they will be provided
right,
the next day, within 24 hours. We'll
If
see.
possible,
number
right.
if possible, the answer
If
is.
there's an answer, yeah.
That's a nice compromise.
That is a nice compromise.
So that would be, a participant must be recognized by the presiding officer, must preface comments by the announcement of his or her name, municipality, residence, and group affiliation. Do we want to change municipality to address? I don't know why it was, everywhere.
It used to be address, and then everybody says, "Mom, you don't have to say your address."
Well, because the policy,
I don't know if it's your meeting.
number one.
I think that's really a safety issue. You know, a lot of times, you know, you might not want people to
I
know.
don't know, the council makes a state address.
You don't have, you can be from any town and come.
You just say your address, right? On River or.
Right,
Yeah.
municipality, I think.
Because I remember there was one woman that was coming here.
Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 4 minutes duration, or less, the 4 minutes shall not include any response. So if we're gonna change it, we could just take out the rest of that. The 4 minutes shall not include any response to the representative of the board. The clock will stop during any responses. If we're saying there's no
There's no
response.
stopping clock.
Take that, yeah. Remove from number 2, just have that. Each statement made by the participant shall be limited to 4 minutes duration or less. No participant may speak more than one time during each of the 3 public forums. Sharing or granting of speaking time to others is not permitted.
That's
just
fine.
that.
And then number 4, this is where we could put in
All
compromise.
statements, questions, or inquiries shall be directed to the presiding officer, and any questions or inquiries directed by the participant to another board member shall be redirected to the presiding officer, who shall determine if the statement, question, or inquiry shall be addressed by the presiding officer or on behalf of the board or by the individual board member.
And you could say if, and you put a semicolon or, and then
At the
say,
designated time.
at the designated time, once the closure of public session.
Or at the designated time on the agenda, we could have a,
Yeah,
Yeah, if you close, yeah.
we could add that to the agenda, like
Right.
that section.
make an agenda item.
And I don't,
You can put number 5, in here, all statements, any questions, that are,
Able to
and
be
any
answered.
questions that are able to be answered will be answered at the close.
At the close of, that's how you can put it instead of creating a.
So when you're answering that question, so let's say at the end of it, now you're gonna answer a question. Is the person then who asked the question, do they come to the podium again?
No,
No,
I would not have that.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
So now, right, so now you're gonna answer the question and there's gonna be
You're gonna
listening.
give the best answer you can
Right.
give.
If
and
you
if-
have the
Listening,
answer.
right, right, absolutely.
And then there's no like shouting from
Right,
the
right,
gallery.
absolutely, right,
That's.
right,
good.
that's-
well, it does say decorum in there, and it does say defamatory
An
statements.
officer may
Well, yeah.
interrupt or terminate.
Yeah, that-
People are yelling at us
Or entry when
And then
it's
we're,
children speaking.
with the video, we're all on the same, like, it seems like the committee feels like we should not do remote participation. It's best to do it in person.
I agree.
I agree with
So
that.
we could discuss it then at the meeting too, because it'll be on there for discussion.
I think this is a nice happy meeting, because I do respect what you're saying.
Yeah.
Ms. Gerby, people come, can you imagine, you don't mean to disrespect anybody, but if they're asking a respectful, appropriate question, they're coming for a reason, they want an answer, but this gives them an answer.
Your example about the gentleman waiting for transportation, he waited through the whole meeting.
He did wait,
Right, and that was, very important, and
to him it was important, can you imagine if
And
he
it
would have
was.
said it and then left?
Unfortunately, my perspective comes from 3 years of being screamed at.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
It's
is
very
part of-
frustrating.
This is part of the, and this is part of the frustration, because this is the part of the policy. Interrupt and warn a participant when a statement or question or inquiry is obscene, offensive, or defamatory. And, when I have interrupted people who have been speaking, it's turned into a screaming and yelling, and.
They should be asked to leave.
yeah, once they make a defamatory, they should just be asked to leave, that should be.
Well, it says, the presiding officer can request any person to leave the meeting when the person does not observe reasonable decorum. We've asked that, and they don't leave. Request the assistance of law enforcement. That, it could. The problem is you can ask somebody to leave, but you can't make somebody leave a public meeting. Only a police officer can.
Mhm.
Right.
And that's what I.
And I think also when you're not up at the microphone, you should show the respect. So people are making comments there. You're trying to speak and you're trying to, you're trying to respond, not just me, anybody.
Right.
Say Dr. Lehman, remove me from it. He's trying to respond and you have people in the back just, you're trying to concentrate and give the appropriate answer. And people are just making comments. It's just, it's not, it doesn't make for the right environment.
No, it doesn't, right.
So are you gonna update this and then send it to us as the committee or before? So are we gonna get we would need the changes on the agenda for next week to vote on.
That'd
It'll
be
be
first.
So it'll be a first read.
First grade. If you want to, you took notes, so,
took
and I have
notes,
in my.
And then I'll run it by you.
Yeah, we'll share with Sheena,
Okay.
she'll update.
She'll update the.
Yeah, she'll update it, and then you can have it by, because
When do you need a
Friday is our actual board agenda that goes out. So Thursday we could talk about it if necessary.
Or we could wait and put it for first read in May. If we need a little bit more time.
No, this is,
No,
I think you
it's
put,
okay.
yeah,
All right.
no, you took.
Any other comments?
Won't matter, so.
I think that's good.
No, I think it was a good conversation.
Okay, and the last one, this is coming from me, it just as being a new board member, I know how you felt.
Right.
You're new on it
Yeah.
too.
Maneuver.
There's some things that are procedural and there's nothing where I could refer to like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do
Right.
this, I need to do this. I think if we had some paper for new board members, what our protocols are, our procedures as a board, that would be helpful. I don't know how everyone else feels about
I
it.
think we get that in our new board member training.
Yeah, when you did your training with Miss Allen, and I know that Miss Tagliaferro was there as well, if I'm not mistaken. You get, Robert's rules, but I think they also
No, not
go
that.
over.
I'm talking about like CCing Chrissy on the emails or those kind of procedures that I wasn't aware
That
of.
would come, that has,
You are, because it was told at the new board member training that I sat in as well.
I don't recall that. I just want, maybe it was said, but there's nothing in writing. There's no document that we could refer to, because sometimes you forget what's said.
We could refer to New Jersey school boards of what a board member should be doing, or what the role of the board member, what the vice president and the president is.
Okay, so for example, if we need to ask Vito a question, we have to CC you. That's
You
not,
have to go through the board president for that.
well, the policy says otherwise.
No, Carmen, I'm not gonna have this argument with you. We've had this discussion round and round with school boards and with Vito. I'm not gonna have this argument.
So all I'm asking is if, can we have it in writing so that the new board members have a document and there's no confusion? That's what that's what they ask. Yeah, I know.
Not for me, because
Right, this is a
I
board.
work for you, you don't work for me, I work for you. You, and you and you. You work for me.
I got all my information at the new board member, but I had everything explained to me by a different board secretary, so I don't know what the new board member piece
It was
was.
the same, it was
there-
the same as what
you
we've
know,
done.
but it
There was
should
no
be-
document, is that the only
It's not a
thing?
document. It doesn't need to be,
Well, sometimes you forget things and it's
Then
good
you
to
ask-
refer somewhere. To the end, so you don't think we need a document, like procedures
I don't
for
know
new
what,
board members? How did you feel as a new board member, like?
Yeah, I think it
With
would
the
be-
emails.
You know, I kind of learned as I was going, because it's a lot to take in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I just learned by going, and a lot of times if I have questions, I would ask, you know, as I went along, is this appropriate? Can I do this? Can I do that? And I kind of learned as you went. But, you know, maybe like a new member orientation kit, you know, whatever, just even just to go tell you where you can get the information, if you don't want to put it, you know, like that. Anything like that, I think would be.
Like school boards.
Yeah,
we have
absolutely, right.
plenty of resources. We have New Jersey school boards. We have Miss Allen as the board secretary. She's open to answer any
She's
question.
probably a good person as a
Right.
resource to
Right.
actually, because she is the board secretary, not business, as the board secretary, she would know what would be considered appropriate or not. Does that make sense? Or direct you to the right place. I mean, I'm just thinking aloud.
Even if it was just one sheet with just, you know, who to contact for what, that would be helpful, you know, it doesn't have to be a book.
Yeah, that was the only thing I wanted to discuss, if we wanted to think moving forward to create something in writing, so new board members have something to refer to.
Well, maybe
And
that's
it's not
something
really
that you could speak to Miss Allen.
I easily can, because what I could do is I could say, let's run through as if I was a new board member, and what are the things, and I could do I could use Q&L notes, or I could do one A, two.
You guys are the educators, what do you think is the best way to educate a new
You know,
board member?
maybe like, you know, we can have the actual website of school boards. Maybe we can have, like, you know, immediate, you know, and I'm not saying it's true or not, I'm just using the example you used. If you want to speak with the attorney, reach out to the board president. When you want to write an email, you just CC the board president. Like, for example, when I send my emails, I include, if it's something that doesn't go to the full board, it goes to the board president and the vice president, and the committee chairperson. You know what I mean, like when I responded to you, you know what I mean, because your policy.
Right.
I mean, so it'd probably be
The
very
key thing
short.
is not to
It's,
send
I
emails
just
to
see
the
it,
entire board.
it's an email, it's just like in the welcome kit,
No.
you know, like I still have my kit.
What her welcome kit, yeah, maybe
No,
we just look at the welcome kit and see how we can make it,
a
maybe
page.
it's like a,
I think she gave a page out.
did she give a page out? I don't recall, but we could look, because we're gonna have new board members soon.
And we got the contracts, we got phone numbers, we got the Roberts rules, and we got something from NJ school boards, but not like our specific procedures for our specific board here in Monroe.
Okay, so,
It was explained.
it's
Part of it
explained,
was
right,
explained.
but we could speak with Ms. Allen, I don't think that's a problem at all. So what you'll do is you'll give me, you're gonna type it up and send it to her, you wanna give it to me and I'll give it to her, and then
You'll
I
be
call you?
talking about
We're talking about the last, yeah,
the last item right
Yeah.
now,
just tell
the,
me how you want me to handle it,
oh, okay, sure.
for the change in policy for the, Public forum.
Oh, I think we're talking about the, items for discuss.
well, if you want to jot down items of discussion, I can
Some
go,
ideas.
I can go right to her and find out, and she could say, you know, she might be able to give me website, or, you know, to report directly to president, or, you know what I mean? I don't think that's, probably could be 5 things, 5 sentences, 4 sentences.
All right, anything else?
Yeah, nothing from me.
All right,
Is this your final?
This is my final committee meeting. Thank you all.
thank
Thank
you
you.
for your service.
Thank you very
for your
much.
service.
And for, you're a good teacher, I learned a lot from you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Wednesday we'll get to, Dawn with our
Oh, yes, Wednesday we'll die.
staff recognition reception.
All right, so that
I hope I don't
concludes
forget.
our meeting for April. All right, and see everybody next week.
Okay, thank you.
And usually